eyes can read. And this is Bloodborne, the board game. Not the video game, just the board game today. We're going to be checking out some of the minifigures in this board game that I have painted, actually. And we're going to maybe not tap on them, because I don't know what tapping on these little teeny tiny figures is going to do. But we will certainly look at them today, because I think some of them are pretty cool. The Bloodborne board game came out as like a Kickstarter thing. So as you know, or as anyone familiar with Kickstarter will know, there's like a ridiculous amount of game content and add-ons and stuff that is kind of there to, make a profit. And I cannot purchase all of that, and I did not purchase all of that when this came out because I don't have all the monies, but I do have the base Bloodborne game. And then I also have the Hunter's Dream expansion pack, because that added a bunch of kind of quality of life things that were pretty cool. And I have the Forbidden Woods expansion. These were also kind of my favorite areas in the game too, so I just thought it was fitting that I get what I would think would just be the coolest stuff. There are some other expansions I'd like to get maybe someday. Maybe someday Bloodborne won't be popular, which hopefully never comes. And maybe then I could buy some of the other expansion packs cheaply. Otherwise, they're like $500 for some of the rarer ones. But anyway, come on to my miniature looking gallery. Alright, so let's start here with our Hunter figures. Here we have the Ludwig's Great Sword. Holy Sword of Ludwig. Oh my god, am I forgetting the name? It's Ludwig's big old sword. And it is the church garb Hunter. You can see here by their clothing. Painted that nice sort of silky looking white. This is honestly probably my favorite character in the board game to play. And also, yeah, one of my favorite weapons in the game as well. Usually this game has like fast and slow characters. But of course, slower characters do more damage. Fast characters are able to get past enemy attacks easier. My favorite fast character would probably be this guy, the Threaded Cane Hunter. You can see right there. They also have the Hunter's Cannon with them to kind of make up for the fact their weapon doesn't do that much damage. But I do love going super fast. And the Threaded Cane was actually the very first weapon that I used in Bloodborne, the very first full playthrough I did. I did all Threaded Cane. I don't know, it's just, in the original game, without the DLC, there's really not that many dex-based weapons. There's a few, but you don't get them till later on. And by the time I did get them, I was just so comfortable with the Threaded Cane, and I had upgraded it so much that I was like, hey, I don't even have the resources, much less the time to start learning this whole new thing. But I've played the video game Bloodborne, God, who knows, like over a dozen times. I've, cleared out like half the weapons by now. Alright, here we have the Hunter Axe Hunter, some more church garb. What's neat about this is it's in its transformed version, so it's a giant axe, the two-handed, not just a little axe. If you don't know about Bloodborne, it's a really interesting video game where you play as a hunter and you have these crazy hunter weapons that transform. So you'll have, say, one move set with the small axe that's just in one hand, while you have your gun in the other hand. And then you can press a button to transform your weapon into an entirely different thing altogether, like this huge axe, and you have an entire new moveset once you do that, and it's super cool. The fourth and final hunter from the initial game would be the classic, the saw cleaver hunter. You have your saw cleaver, your pistol, the little kind of wolf cap looking thing, your standard, it's not really steampunk, but like Victorian punk outfit. This is probably the most iconic hunter from Bloodborne. Whenever you see Bloodborne, it is likely this character on the screen. The saw cleaver is also probably one of the best, if not the best, weapon, which is kind of funny because it is, once again, one of the first weapons you get. You can have an insane damage output with it and go very fast. And there's that one technique where you basically just constantly change the weapon over and over again, and it maximizes your damage. These next four are additional hunters I have for the game. This is the Beast Claw Hunter. You got your Beast Claw right there, and you have the Beast transformation already occurring right there. And this, I believe, is one of the garbs you find on that wandering beast man in the Forbidden Woods, I think. Because you have, the tentacle thing on your arm and the raggedy kind of worn cloaks and whatnot. The beast is pretty cool. If you have the right runes, you actually get to transform into a beast yourself in the game. So I always thought that was a really neat touch. You have what is, oh man, it's hard to say what is possibly one of the coolest weapons in the game, because like every weapon is one of the coolest weapons in the game, but the stake driver weapon, it is just insanely fun and wacky to use. It's basically you have this giant engine strapped to your arm with this stake coming out of it, and you have to charge it up and then just explode it onto one of your enemies, and it does insane damage. It does 5 or 6 damage in this game alone, the board game. And you only get, basically one shot to use it, but once you do, you kill any enemy in front of you. Really fun. Here you have the hunter with the spear here. This is probably my least favorite of this game, just because all their attacks are, the way this game is structured, you'll have 3 attacks on each side of a sheet. The sheet being your weapon sheet of, okay, side A is this version, and side B is the other version of it when you transform your weapon. Usually they have 3 attacks on each side. Some, like the stake driver, only have 1 because they're such a big weapon. But this guys are just 3 all the same and 3 all the same again, just because it's, I don't know, it's about being standard and having that length and that reach against other enemies, but I just think he's kind of meh. I do like his little top hat, though. And then a really cool hunter right here, because this is the Chikage hunter with their little, the sword right there. It's the Chikage. And it's this blood sword that feeds off of your energy. So playing it in the video game is pretty difficult, because the more you use it in its blood mode, the more your health is actually depleted. But it does a lot of interesting moves and has a great damage output, just because it is, pretty powerful. It has that trade-off. And then, of course, you have the Evelyn pistol right there, which once again goes into that sort of blood tinge infused knight who probably is working for Cainhurst and the Vile Bloods and all those crazy fellas. Now, for the first monsters you face in Bloodborne, these are probably the most, the most basic, the most iconic, just the townspeople who have gone crazy and are coming after you. Just the mob. You got their torches. You got their axe, their shield, their gun in the back. Just your average Yarnamite insurrection. They'll have all their crazy quotes like, it's all your fault, or get away, get away. They add this level of insanity to the game because it's just like, oh, here are all the normal people who have just totally lost their minds because this world is just so crazy and nuts. And they appear a lot in the board game as just, your most standard enemy. Your next pretty standard enemy would be the troll guys. They have their, big old brick they like to bash you with. And you kind of get the impression, oh, they were probably just, maybe a bigger dude in Yarnum, and once all this madness and disease broke out, they just got mutated and became, gigantic. Now want to smash your face in. They got this little hunchback with their cloak. They kind of lumber around in the game and kind of do have some slow attacks against you, but then all of a sudden will just surge with that brick and try to bash you against the wall, something crazy like that. And here you have probably your most difficult enemy from like the initial areas, as well as another one of the more iconic ones you have in the Bloodborne board game. They call them Scourge Beasts, but I always thought they were just like werewolves because they obviously, have that look about them. It's very much like, oh, that's a regular person who just transformed into this, this wolf-like monster. They're, coming after you, and they always have these lunge attacks, and they lunge into these huge combos that really mess you up. But I just love the look of them. I love the idea of being trapped in this horrible nightmare realm, and you have all these little wolf creatures, or really big wolf creatures, chasing you down. Okay, the two guys right here kind of go hand in hand because they're the male beast patient and the female beast patient. You'll see these guys more around the old Yarnum area of the game. Kind of the people who went sick in Yarnum and were sent to this sort of sectioned off quarantine area of the city and just sort of went crazy. The famous hunter Jura in the game watches over these people because he still believes that, oh, these are just normal guys. They're just sick. Someday the cure will come out or the disease will revert and they'll go back to normal. So to kill these people would be, to kill these monsters would be like killing people. So he sort of protects this area of the city. And if you try to attack them, then of course he'll attack you too. But these guys, the male patients, kind of run around. They're pretty fast. They are more prevalent, and they're hiding kind of in the smoke or in the fire. When these ones are more like in the buildings that are scattered around, and they make these crazy shrieks, and they're quite terrifying, and they're always lunging at you, and it's so crazy to see their animations because their cloaks just fly like crazy when they're running, and you never see their face, which just sort of adds to the horror of these little creatures. And they are on the smaller side, both in the miniatures and in the game itself. So usually they get pretty packed heavily into the areas. It's not like, with the werewolf scourge beasts, you'll fight, like one or two at the same time. With those guys, you'll fight a bunch. Now the last main enemies from the standard board game are the church people, the church hunters. Well, not hunters, but the church like servants. In the cathedral ward, you have your standard like little lantern knight guy who they're always wandering around and doing these patrols, and some of them have various weapons. This is one of the ones with a staff, which either they'll bash you with or they'll cast little spells with, or maybe the spells come from their lantern. I can't quite remember right now. And then you have the giants who lumber around very slowly, and you hear that rattling chain as they do. And they have these massive attacks with their huge axes, but they're pretty easy to dodge, honestly. What's neat about the board game is it kind of takes into account how massive they are, so it has attack cards for them that are just like, yeah, it doesn't attack. It's just too big and too slow. So it's like, oh, good, I can get away from this guy. Because you definitely don't want to fight him because he has a huge health pool compared to everyone else. But I really like their look a lot. I like how they have these, really beautiful white cloaks. This kind of white, pure looking garb and their little hats. But the more they hang around Yarnum, the dingier they get and the darker they get. And they always have these, I can never tell if there's actually their face or if it was masks, but they have this pretty creepy pallor, I wish I had a better camera I could show you guys. But they are just a haunting duo. Okay, so for our first boss of the game, you have the Cleric Beast. And the Cleric Beast was kind of the first boss in the video game too. He is an optional boss. The first required boss is, Gascoigne. But I feel like a lot of players just run into this guy first anyway. This is honestly one of my favorite designs just because, and not even just in this game, like monster designs ever, because just look at this thing. You have this, it's like kind of a chimera almost, but like a perverted chimera, because you have, this sort of animal beast-like beginnings, and then you have these exposed ribs right here, and it goes into one arm as, thin and, very muscled and very wiry, and then on the other side it's, very, very reminiscent of like Akira or Resident Evil, where it just gets, huge and it looks like it's being pumped full of this malefic energy. You can see like these veins or tendrils or just something is almost like it's almost burning off of him. Just so much like raw power and hate and evil. And then look at this face. You have this mane of more of those tendrils and evil. And you have these horrible jaws and fangs. And then these giant horns, where one side kind of looks more like horns, and then one side kind of looks more like that energy almost just beating off of him. The back's kind of the same way. You get even a look at that, an even better perspective off the back of, oh yeah, you got your normal side here, well, quote unquote normal, and then it just sort of explodes on that side. Really cool enemy. They really outdid themselves with their monster direction and their design on this game. And this probably is also the biggest minifigure I have from them. I mean, you can see it covers my whole hand. It is just so neat. God, I wish I really do, at moments like these, wish I had like the entire, 10-box full set of Bloodborne stuff, just because the level of detail in these minis is so neat and so refined. Keeping in mind too, the miniatures come in like a gray, like you do have to paint them yourself. Or I guess you could order like a pre-painted version somewhere. But maybe that's part of the fun too, getting to design it yourself, and I'll actually show you some more fun, wacky designs later on for our Forbidden Woods expansion pack. But we'll just set him, I'll set him right here actually, in the land of faded out zones. And we'll grab our next boss, which is Father Gascoigne. You'll notice that there are two figures here, and they're kind of the same, because in the first phase of Gascoigne, you fight him and he's this, this hunter, and he has his axe and he has his gun and he's blasting away at you. But he's gone crazy. He's losing his mind, which is why he's attacking you. Usually he's a really good, upstanding man. And then halfway through the fight, he changes into a beast. He sort of explodes out of his skin. He gets taller. He has, these jaws, these teeth, and he's blind with rage. He attacks you with his claws instead of any weapons. And his clothing, shreds up. And it's just an insane fight. It's the first required fight of the game. And I think it's like a sort of like a check for the player. You have to learn how to play the game to get past him, because he's all about, not running away, but instead dodging and countering and doing more damage and learning about your surroundings. And just a very visceral fight that I think is memorable to any Bloodborne player out there. That's one of the best fights in the game. And it's always interesting to go back and play Bloodborne again and realize how, retrospect or whatever is 2020, and playing him on a second or third or fourth time, he's so easy because you know how to play the game at that point. You just counter him, he's dead, and you all get basically transported back to the very first time you beat or battled Gascoigne, and he just tore you to shreds instantly, and you just thought to yourself, man, how will I ever beat this guy? He's just too difficult. You have what was personally one of the hardest bosses for me in the game the first time, just because I couldn't understand the concept of poison and how it would just obliterate me, and how when you fight him the first time, you don't really have, the necessary tools to, combat poison, and you don't really realize that, oh, hey, fire will just destroy this guy instantly. But this is the blood-starved beast, very gangly and thin and monstrous, and this little thing right here is a flap of his back that is just flapped over his body, and he's just this monster prowling around. What's pretty cool about these guys is kind of like in Dark Souls as well, the same games by this video game developer. What starts as a boss, like an area boss in the game, in the early game, becomes a normal enemy later on. You'll find tons of these things in the Nightmare Frontier, and once you go into those caves and you just find it full of these guys, oh my god, it's just terrifying. You just have to do kamikaze runs to get in there and grab the item you want, expect to get ripped apart by these guys, and just leave, because this is one, off the walls enemy. Never gives you a break, just tears you to shreds instantly. A whole mess of fun. But he's great. I love fighting this guy. The board game's pretty cool because you'll obviously fight whatever boss in the very end of the campaign, but partway through you'll, maybe fight one phase of it, or they'll make a little guest appearance. It's not just the last battle. I think that is for our next boss here. But, like Gascoigne, you interact with Gascoigne in every chapter of the campaign, and you do with the Cleric Beast as well. So, this is the Blood-Starved Beast. This right here is Vicar Amelia, the last boss from the core set for the board game. I don't even know how to describe this, because it's like a wolf, stag kind of hybrid. You have those antlers, you have the long wolf head, and kind of, Red Riding Hood's grandma vibe of a wolf just in these holy vestments or this kind of old lady clothing. You'll notice too, some of the clothing she had kind of almost transforms into her fur. At least how I interpret it. Because when you find her in the game, she's just this little lady praying at an altar, and she transforms into this giant beast. And then, the fight begins, and she's clutching this amulet to her chest, and that's kind of a key element of the fight to be watching out for. And fight takes place in the giant cathedral, which several other fights will take place. It's kind of a central area in the Bloodborne board game, as well as the Bloodborne video game, as well as the board game. But look at that. To be honest, I was just only slightly disappointed at this minifigure because this monster is just the same size, if not bigger, as the cleric beast. And I feel like, yeah, the cleric beast is huge, but compared, side by side, Victor Amelia almost seems kind of small. And I just know that she is gigantic. And I would just, I just wish she was as huge and as imposing, as just threatening as the cleric beast minifigure. I sure like her a lot, and I think she is effective, but sometimes I just think her proportions are just a slight bit off. Okay, so now we have the extra minifigures from the Hunter's Dream expansion pack. And actually those first 8 human figures I showed you were from that pack. The initial 4 hunters you get in the base game I painted differently. And that's just the Ludwig's Holy Blade, the axe, the saw cleaver, the threaded cane, the classic weapons. And this Hunter's Dream introduces mini-bosses which end up being the other 8 hunters, just as like evil hunters that you encounter throughout the game. These are the other 2. You have the executioners with their big, imposing cleavers and their armor and their little cape here and their hood, very mysterious. And then you have, the real star of the show, the Winter Lanterns. Everyone who's played Bloodborne knows about these guys. You hear that ominous, otherworldly singing when you know they're nearby, and then you see them and they have the body of the doll from the dream, and then they have this weird, looks kind of like an alien parasite on their head. And when they move around, it's not like the doll's moving around, but it's like the parasite is guiding them and sort of determining the direction they go. And then they try to latch onto you and suck out your life force. They make you insane, and they cause us frenzy damage, which, if you don't know about frenzy damage, then consider yourself lucky, because it is one of the most difficult mechanics ever. Just a whole mess of fun. And not even difficult because it's necessarily hard, but just because when you first play it, you have no idea what's going on. You essentially just die for no reason, and you're like, what? What happened to me? What's going on? What's wrong? But also with the Hunter's Dream, you get 2 new bosses that pertain, of course, to the Hunter's Dream. And the first one you got, wow, is Gehrman, the first hunter, and his giant scythe, also known as the Burial Blade. Gehrman's one of my favorites. The Burial Blade's one of my favorite weapons. Is it the best one? Mechanically, maybe not, but it is a huge scythe, so how can you not love using it? Gehrman's super cool. He's this old man who's in a wheelchair the entire game, and if you choose at the end to defy him, he kind of just laughs at you, gets up out of his wheelchair, and then, pulls out this massive scythe and battles you. And it's just an off-the-walls battle. It has one of the most amazing themes in all of the game. It has one of the best arenas in the entire game, because you're just in this field of glowing flowers and this otherworldly, the Hunter's Dream, of course. And there's just something about it that is so magical. And it's so especially magical once you, beat him and realize, okay, you're a hunter in this world. And you have defeated the first hunter, the greatest hunter of them all. So now it's like you're the greatest hunter of them all. And then, of course, you get his weapon afterward, which is just so neat. So there's that added in. Now you have kind of a spoiler alert enemy, but you have the Moon Presence. Yeah, I don't just explain the lore of this. So there's multiple endings of the game, and one of the endings, you let Gehrman kill you. You don't question him, and you wake up, everything's fine. In the second one, you do fight Gehrman, you kill him, and then this thing comes down from the moon and kills you and turns you into Gehrman, and you become its servant. Because then you realize that, oh, Gehrman was actually this thing's servant the entire time. The third ending, though, is if you find, believe it or not, umbilical cords throughout the game, and you use the umbilical cords, you eat them, then when this thing comes down to kill you, it can't kill you, and you have to fight this thing. And then if you beat this thing, you become the alien monster, and you become this little slug that the doll in the hunter's dream starts to care for. It really is just wild and bizarre, but, why would you expect anything less from Bloodborne? But it's basically like this giant skeleton. You got, more of those exposed ribs. You got these crazy tail here. And this sort of alien, Cthulhu tentacle nonsense on its back. Its face, what? No one really knows what that is. It is just such a horrific design. Because when it does come down to fight you, it just comes down from the moon all elegant and titanic and just terrifying. And it touches your hand, kind of like the Sistine Chapel God touching man parallel, or at least I think. And there's just something about it that's so existentially disturbing. But without a doubt, one of my favorite minifigures, one of my favorite enemies, and I think it turned out really well too, so yeah. Okay, so the reason why I'm going to do these ones a little bit different is because they're painted a bit different. So now in the Bloodborne base game, I just showed you one of each of the creatures. That's because they're just all sort of painted the same. For these ones, they're all painted different. And you may say to yourself, Bryce, what the hell? Why are they painted these wacky colors? Well, they're intentionally made that way because I wanted them to look, you classically inclined people may know what I'm talking about the classics illustrated comic books from the 1960s. Very poppy, very, technicolor, very just out there. Also kind of like Scooby-Doo. I wanted to turn Bloodborne, this horrific, terrifying thing, into, like a Scooby-Doo adventure, just kind of fun and wacky and have everyone just look goofy. So these are the little village people when you go to the Hemwick Charnel Lane, past the Forbidden Woods, and try to find the witches of Hemwick. These are all from the Forbidden Woods expansion pack. These detail fighting the witches of Hemwick and fighting the shadows of Yharnam, each with some enemies of their own. So these are the little witch ladies you will encounter there. And then the other people you encounter will be these little creepy shadow people. You see they have their sickles. They kind of have that, dark energy, like with the cleric beasts and Vicar Amelia. And they have this horrible gangly walk. What's fun about these guys is actually if you go into the video game and you have no Madman's insight, these guys never spawn. So theoretically, you could go into the Witch of Hemwick fight with no insight whatsoever, and you would never fight these guys whatsoever. It would just be the witches, so it would be no challenge whatsoever. Not that it's any challenge to begin with. But I think these are probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, standard enemy in the video game. Just because when they spawn, they come out of the ground with this crazy crazy scream, and there's this horrible red energy, and they usually come out in the darkness and dark areas, and they're just so freaking cool. I mean, look at that. That's just awesome. Yeah, there's just something about these guys. Any kind of weird, horrible witch nonsense is stuff that I'm going to be 100% all in on. Even the witches themselves, which you do get 2 witches of Hemwick. And yes, does it look like they're little coral monsters from under the sea? Yes, yes it does. You know, honestly, they looked like little coral monsters before, but you get these little witches. I don't know if you can quite tell here with my crappy camera quality, but they have a little stick and they have this little bag of eyes. At least I think it's eyes, and they're not really covered in coral, but I think it is just more eyes, because they cut people's eyeballs out and they use them for magical nonsense and evil crap. So that's the witches. The witches are kind of known as the easiest fight in Bloodborne. Kind of the, almost like not like a joke fight, but very much like a what were they thinking when they made this. I think it's a great fight. I still like it. And what's actually kind of interesting is this is, I think, the hardest fight in the board game. Because the way that the game is structured and the way that the witches teleport and summon other enemies, this fight is actually extremely difficult because you're just on one little tile of the game. And anytime they summon stuff, they'll teleport away, so then you have to move over there, but you only get so many actions. And once they summon something to your spot, then that thing gets like an action against you, and you basically get killed as you're just trying to follow these guys around. And it actually is one heck of a fight, to be honest. Before I go on to the other set of Bloodborne creatures for this expansion, I need to talk about the pigs, because this expansion also has the giant man-eater boar monsters as well. It's not quite the pig fisting route that you all know and love from Murgo's Loft. And can I say pig fisting route on YouTube? I don't know, but I just did. And we just have these giant pigs that you find in this area of the game, as well as, like I said, in Murgo's Loft, where you have to sneak up behind them, stab your weapon through their butt, and then, kill them for the backstab. And you get an insane amount of soul, or no, blood echoes, God, I always call them souls. And that's how you spend points for your upgrades and your experience and all that. Speaking of, calling blood echoes souls, when I played Sekiro, I called all their experience points, I forget what they were even called, I called them blood echoes. And when I played Elden Ring, I specifically remember calling them, or calling the bonfires there, the shrines, whatever's from software game I play, I always end up using the terminology of the previous game. It just takes my brain too long to catch up. But these are the pigs, the boars, and they are really obnoxious, and they appear in this board game to just sort of follow you around, chase you around, and just be little gatekeeping jerks for certain areas of the board. Now, for the Forbidden Woods, it's all the Forbidden Woods, but for the more woodsy section, you have the snake people. They are just like a regular townsfolk kind of person who just sort of wandered into the woods, and now they have all these snakes coming out of their heads. We got our purple snake man, our red snake man, our yellow snake man, and our green snake man. And these are kind of an obnoxious enemy in the game because, actually you can have, if you attack them real quick, you can stop them from transforming into their snake-headedness. But once they are snake-headed, who knows? Once they have their snake heads, they are quite a pain. And you just get non-stop poisoned, non-stop stun locked. They are just a huge pain in the butt. but once again, super cool. As someone who is afraid of snakes, I think this is a totally nightmare area, because not only do you have the snake-headed men, you have the snake balls. And a snake balls, you say, what is a snake ball? Well, a snake ball is a literal ball of snakes that are just slithering about the entire area of varying sizes. Here we have, the same kind of scheme. Red, green, purple, yellow, our little snake ball companions. They are also horrific. And in the game, I'm going to be honest, I think most people do this too. When you're in the Forbidden Woods, you just run past everything because there's just too many snake balls, too many snake men, too many giant pigs, and it is just a maze of an area that all you can do is basically just run through it and hope you don't get killed. Otherwise, you get ripped apart by snakes, and God, it's just a nightmare going through there. Probably why it is one of my favorite areas of the game, is it is just crazy, and it really encapsulates the madness of playing Bloodborne, of going through that harrowing experience. But I think these are one of my favorite minifigures for the main characters. I mean, just because I just like the way they turned out. I think the color codedness works the best on these guys. They're just a scary looking enemy. Yeah. Now, for the boss of the Forbidden Woods of that area, the snaky area, we have the Shadows of Yharnam, who kind of look like ring wraiths. They each are similar in appearance. They're, shadows. In the game, they're all black here. They're the Technicolor Shadows of Yharnam, the Technicolor Nazgul. But they each have a sort of a different gimmick. So one guy is the sword guy, and he just chases you down with the sword. One guy is like the caster guy who just hangs out in the back, and it's this when they have their little fire that they shoot out from you, and they don't really attack you much up front. They sort of just shoot at you from afar with magic. And then you have the other guy who's kind of a combination of both. And all three have a separate health bar, and you kind of want to take them all down simultaneously, or maybe just bum rush and try to get one out. But regardless, they still have three phases where if you say don't touch two of them and just bring one down in health, the phases actually will start. So you do have kind of that, which side do I want? Do I want to do one first and acknowledge that the other two phases will probably activate quicker for the remaining two guys, but I'm just going to start at one and one? Or do I try to bring all three of them down separately, which may be harder at the time, but at least they won't upgrade too quick? Because as you'll see here, they have little snakes coming out of their body, because that's one of the phases where they get snakes. And then they have snake attacks and weird crazy stuff like that. And in their third phase, they actually summon giant snakes to shoot up from the ground and attack you that way. And that is not a fun phase. You really want to end the fight at that point. Sometimes the fight ends because you get killed, but, who knows, right? But another really nice boss, I think. There's just so many good enemies in this game that it's hard to just pick one. Now for the final set of guys, we have the initial 4 Bloodborne characters, but they are painted in that sort of Technicolor, it's 1960s Scooby-Doo classic literature nonsense. So we have the Axe Hunter, but now with a yellow and purple robe. And I'm going to be honest with you, when I play the game, I play it with these guys. They're just so much cooler to me. I just love the colors, and honestly, I've considered I forget what it's called, but having that chemical to wash away the paint of the other characters and just doing them all like this, because they're just so fun. Having that little set. We have the standard classic hunter. This one is now blue. You got their little axe, the saw cleaver, I mean, their pistol, and we have them and all their blue fun. The back of their cape is red. Tried to pick two main colors for each one, so this is blue and red. You'll see their scarf is red, the cape is red. Some of the smaller detail on them. I just really like how these guys turned out. They just look so fun. The threaded cane hunter is yellow, green and purple. Green is their base color, purple is like their accent color with their cape and some of their little parts of their coat right there. I almost wish that there was like a mod, for the video game Bloodborne to have all the characters look like this. That'd just be so fun. Nice fun to me. Fun to me, so that's all that matters, right? And the last character you have, still my favorite, the Ludwig's Only Blade Hunter, but now their church garb is red and orange. Oh yeah. And then here is the full set of them. If I can. If my hand is good enough. Here we go. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. The gang's all here. But yeah, those are my Bloodborne characters. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at them with me. I know I enjoy them, but I'm also a huge nerd. Anyway, if you guys like stuff like this, I actually have a lot of other little minifigures. They were pre-painted, of course, because they're from back in the day when, I don't want to say when you had higher quality stuff, because maybe I'm just jaded, but when stuff was, when stuff was higher quality, sure, why not? But I have some Star Wars minifigures, and I have some Lord of the Rings minifigures if you'd be interested in looking at those. Also, of course, Mansions of Madness stuff, Descent stuff, Arkham Horror stuff. Bloodborne is obviously my favorite, but there's plenty of other things in the works if that's something you would like. Anyway, this has been Emprise. You have been listening to Emprise Can Read, though I have not been reading today. We have just been looking. I hope that, I already said this, why am I saying it again? Dog City never sleeps, that's what I meant to say. And I hope that you may sleep. Now.